Good morning, fourth grade, and welcome to Wednesday's ELA lesson. We have been talking about natural disasters this week in your Wonders book, so I found an article about flooding in News ELA and thought I'd share, especially since here in Columbus, Indiana, we have quite a few floods that happen every year. So I thought this would be good information to read. So, the many effects of flooding. And here's a picture of a residential area flooded by the Ohio River during the flood of 1997 in Utica, Indiana. So, actually, guys, Utica, Indiana is literally just a tiny town that's 15 minutes away from where I'm originally from. So, I actually know this area. And I can tell you, living in that area, yes, floods happened all the time. And sometimes they would get this bad. Floods can be destructive to humans and the environment. However, they are also essential to many ecosystems. So, an ecosystem is basically any system where multiple living things live together. So, it can include plants and animals, bugs, us even. Rivers have been important to humans throughout history. They provide food, fresh water, and fertile land for growing crops. So when something is fertile, it just means things are able to grow. Water is needed for life, but it can also be destructive. In many cases, the flooding of rivers can have terrible effects. Flooding is the most common natural disaster, and the results are often deadly. A 1931 flood in China was one of the worst flooding events in recorded history. About 3.7 million people died. 3.7 million, that is a lot of people. It's hard to wrap your head around that number. Floods affect humans, but they also affect the environment. Their effects are not always bad, however. In fact, some ecosystems even depend on flooding during certain seasons. Floods can cause harm. Flooding can harm wildlife. Water can drown animals and destroy habitats too. For example, a flood in India in 2012 killed many one-horned rhino. Floodwaters can pick up dirt from riverbanks. Particles of mud and dirt float in the water. These particles are known as sediment. So sediment is kind of like these really, really tiny rocks, like sand or dirt. If the water becomes filled with sediment, it appears dirty. Too much sediment will block rivers and streams from flowing. This can kill water-dwelling animals and destroy habitats. Floodwater can carry pollution too. These pollutants can include pesticides, garbage, or sewage. Sometimes polluted floodwater can run into the ocean. This can harm marine life. Okay, so pollution, these can be anything that's harmful to an environment. Pollutants are kind of a noun version of that. So pollutants are things that cause pollution. So usually in water or air. So because pesticides are very harmful chemicals that can kill things. Garbage we know is very harmful, as you can see in this picture right here. Sewage, if you don't know what sewage is, it's water that comes out of toilets. Gross, right? So that can cause pollution. And marine life, this M word right here, marine refers to anything that lives in the ocean or salt water. So if you look at this picture here, that's incredible, right? That's a lot of trash, and that was caused by flooding. Floods can also lead to disease outbreaks, in case you didn't know. Some deadly diseases live in water. These include hepatitis A and cholera. Floodwaters can carry these diseases and make people sick. So if you think about it, if water is flooding and carrying pollution over from another place, like pesticides, garbage, or sewage, and people are around that water, are swimming in it, or drinking it even, Of course it can make you sick. Floods are not always bad. Sometimes seasonal floods are necessary to bring new life to ecosystems. So I don't know about you, but my experience with floods have never been good. So I don't know how they could be helpful, but we're going to find out. Some floods are helpful. Floods carry important nutrients to the surrounding land. When the floodwaters dry up, they leave sediment behind. This sediment is a natural fertilizer. It improves the quality of the dirt and encourages plants to grow. Okay, so to me that kind of makes sense. As long as the floodwater isn't carrying pollution in it, then it should actually be good for the land. Because as we can see, it's a natural fertilizer. It helps things grow. Egypt's Nile River floods every year. The ancient Egyptians built their first cities along the Nile. The river's floods made the nearby soil perfect for growing food. So it can actually help crops and plants grow. Floods can refill pools of fresh water underground. Floodwater sinks into the ground, then it drips through layers of dirt and rock. After a while, the water reaches underground bodies of water called aquifers. These aquifers supply clean, fresh water to springs, lakes, and rivers. In dry seasons, this groundwater may be the only supply of fresh water to a region. Okay, so again, as long as the floodwater is clean, then it can actually be a source of drinking water for people. So aquifers, this weird word right here, these are underground sources of water. Helping fish, boosting water supplies. Some animals use seasonal floods as a sign. The floods may signal that it is time to mate or migrate. When an animal migrates, it moves from one habitat to another. For example, in 2016, a flood triggered thousands of birds to migrate from their wetlands habitat to the Macquarie, I guess that's how you say it, marshes in Australia. Small seasonal floods can be good for fish. During floods, sediment is left behind on riverbeds. Left behind on riverbeds. Sediment can provide a place for baby fish to grow. The floodwaters also carry nutrients that small animals eat. Floods can help refill fresh water supplies. They can keep lakes from drying up. Floods can also help marshes and swamps. Many animals depend on marshes and swamps. In dry seasons, they might dry up, but floods help refill the wetlands and keep the ecosystem going. So it's an extra source of water. It can be good for fish because it allows baby fish to grow and it brings food. Floods are a force of nature. They can both help and harm the ecosystems they affect. Floods can be destructive to humans and the environment, but they are also necessary to keep some ecosystems alive. Okay, so that is your News ELA article. I also provided a link in the It's Learning assignment, so that way you can come back and read it again if you need to. You will probably have to use your BCSC Google email to sign into News ELA if it asks you to. It may not. But if you need to, use Google to log in. And don't forget to answer the questions.